Welcome to the podcast. My name is Shane Rhodes. Today we have a very, very fun interview for you. It's going to be New York transplant, Broadway veteran, and my friend Mike Milligan. But before we get in, let's go ahead and discuss a few things. First, we got a follow. Allison Bella 007. Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the podcast, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Thank you so much. All right. So, a few things before we jump on in. So, first off, I've reached a goal earlier to get to 50 followers. And now I'm trying to make my way to 55 because Twitch is somehow saying that I haven't reached the 50 goal to get across the affiliate threshold to then opt to monetize the channel. So I am trying to reach it. So if you do enjoy what you're watching, do give it a follow. And also, if you have a question for Mike in this conversation, please feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll get to it at the end of the conversation. So a couple of things I want to go ahead and ask in regards to a call to action. First off, I want everybody to go see the movie Abigail. I'm going to go see it on Saturday, and I'm super excited to go see this. And why am I asking you to go see Abigail? Well, because it's starring Melissa Barrera. And if you remember, Melissa Barrera lost out on the Scream movie for having the temerity to stand up for the Palestinian people. And unlike a couple of her white colleagues, she got unduly punished for speaking up on behalf of the Palestinian people and against the genocide that's happening to them in Gaza. So please go support the movie. Go support people who are willing to fight the good fight. Also, please make sure to use 5 calls, any other tools that you have, to call your representatives, to call for conditional aid to Israel. That is going to be very, very key to make sure we maintain the pressure. Also, to all of my theater geeks out there, please, 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 I am calling on you to support a theater company that I love so, so much. It is Teatro Vista. They are holding a fundraising campaign right now. They are a little bit short of their goal, and they're looking to try to make that goal, I think, sometime in the next month. The big reason why I support this, I know some of you already know, is that I myself, I'm half Nicaraguan, I'm half Latino. Latin representation is really, really important to me. Absolutely important. Because I think our people are always so painfully ignored in this country, culturally, and on so many different fronts in regards to representation. We're ignored not only in regards to what is put out there in the media, but in terms of every institutional avenue, funding. And the 2 people that are running Teatro Vista, ever since they started running it, I swear to God, they are doing the best work in Chicago. The best, most exciting, most original, most eclectic work in Chicago. And, you know, when they started, they went from doing a immigration story musical that kind of took cues from The Wizard of Oz, to a 2-person horror play, to a silent movie play that was so charming, so beautiful, that won like 9-10 Jeffs. They swept it to a modern adaptation of, God, what's the, oh my God, the famous Lorca play. The famous Lorca play. Oh my God, it is Bernarda. It is Bernarda. Okay. It was fantastic. And right now, they still need help to make that threshold. And it kills me to see a company this fucking good get underfunded and especially get underpublicized by the Chicago media. And I don't know Lorena, but I've heard wonderful things about her. But what I can tell you about Wendy, she is one of my favorite leaders in Chicago theater. She is innovative, she's creative, and she's somebody who really cares about her community and really cares about her ensemble. And I think that that's something that I took real big notice of when she took over, was the fact that she really went to her ensemble, I think, to like make the work that they're doing. And it's paying dividends because their ensemble is amazing. It's amazing. So, what I can tell you is to please, if you've got the funds to do it, even if it's $10, $20, $5, donate some money to Teatro Vista to help them reach their goal. And just something to remind you about the lack of representation in terms of Latin representation, even in theater. They are the only Latin equity company, not in Illinois, in the country. In the country. They are the only equity company. Wow. So please make sure you drop a donation to them because they are a fantastic company. Fantastic company. And I couldn't be any more just outwardly supportive of them, and I want everyone here to be supportive of them too, because as much as we can go to our comunidad to man, I pronounced that very poorly. I'm still working on my Spanish, y'all. But it also takes the wider community to support as well. Like we do for other companies. Like we do for the Steppenwolfs, the Goodmans, hell, even the Jackalopes, the other companies that are run normally that usually have had white leadership. So please go out and support them. I might be misspeaking about Jackalope, and if I am, I'm very, very sorry. But but you get what I mean. You get what I mean. Support Teatro Vista. They're incredible. Now, to get to the introduction to Mike Milligan here. Mike Milligan has been in the Chicago area for some time, but he originally spent the majority of his career out in New York City, and has worked on Broadway a few times. Credits include Jerusalem, Labette. Labette he also did internationally, and a couple of things about those shows is he got to do those shows with the one and only Mark Rylance. And he also got to be one of the replacements for the very, very long run of the Tony Award-winning August Osage County. Off-Broadway, he has done Mercy Killers, also internationally, as well as many, many other theaters around the country. Tom Paine, Golem, The Come Up. And he was also trained at Juilliard. So let us all welcome my friend Mike Milligan.
Hello,
Mike.
That's the Juilliard School.
Yes, the Juilliard School of Drama, my dear boy.
I went to the Ohio State University.
Just like I went to the theater school at DePaul University, formerly the Goodman School of Drama.
I believe it's the
Goodman School, not the Goodman School of Drama. Okay. The 90-year-old institution of Chicago theater. Oh man, how are you doing? It's good to see you.
I'm doing good. I've exiled myself up here in Evanston, which I love. I just moved up here a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. I live 5 blocks from Howard Street, so I still.
Okay, so you're on the border.
Yeah, I'm on the border.
Okay. Gotcha. So for those that don't know, so me and Mike actually did Cat on a Hot Tin Roof over at Drury Lane, which was definitely an experience in and of itself. That was very, very fun. And I don't know. At some points, a little wild too.
It's a very long commute out to Drury Lane, so we spent a lot of traffic jams philosophizing.
Yeah. It was a lot of carpooling and a lot of, probably for a lot of other people, a lot of very boring conversations about equitable taxation.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Now, if you brought it up, this interview could go for 2 hours.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and everyone's going to be here going, I thought we were going to talk about acting. Why the fuck are we talking about taxes? By the way, I totally appreciate that you didn't mute your microphone when I was doing my introduction, so then your little laughter was just appearing through while you're on camera.
No, I'm sorry. That's
No, it's totally cool. It's totally cool. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. So, like, I know you started it in New York, but like, I don't know the earliest story of the young buck Mike Milligan. How did you? Where did you grow up? How did you get into theater? How did you catch the bug?
I am from Central Ohio, a suburb called Westerville, Ohio. And my mom was well, she was a she did community theater, and when I was young, she and her friend started a storytelling duo, and so
Mm-hmm.
they would you know travel around, tell stories at schools and libraries and stuff like that. And my sister also, who's 5 years older than me, is uh, was an actress.
Mm-hmm.
She's now evolved into a blues musician.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's a true artist. She's gone on an incredible journey, but they both kind of paved the way for me. My mom would often take me along with her. I would get to play hooky and
Mm-hmm.
sit on the sidelines and watch her perform. And so I just grew up like, when like if there was an assignment in elementary school and they're like, okay, you guys are going to put on a play, the other kids would be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, Mike, you're the director because you're an actor, right? And
Yeah.
you kind of like someone says that to you and you're like, oh yeah, yeah. And you kind of have that identity. So I always did plays um, through, you know, junior high, high school.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college at Ohio State. I was not a theater major, but again, I did plays throughout my time there. I had some kind of pretentious, long-winded degree. They had like a develop your own program. I'll say it. It's entertaining to me now. On my diploma, it says the predicament of culture,
What?
an intertextual
What?
approach, an intertextual approach to the humanities.
Okay.
So,
If you showed that to me, I would just ask, what the fuck is this University of Phoenix place that you went to get your degree?
yeah. I mean, basically, it was a ploy that allowed me to cobble together just classes that I was taking into a way that I could graduate,
Mm-hmm.
So the classes all had to fall between 11 and 3 o'clock because I didn't want to get up in the morning, and I don't know. I was not like a very studious fellow, at the Ohio State um, Big Ten college
I
experience.
mean, is Ohio State really a place where people go to be a studious scholar?
I think they do now.
They
They
they do?
it's the academics have, they've upped their game over there from when I was there. I don't know,
Okay.
yeah, but I don't know, you know. So all that time though, I wasn't thinking that I was going to be an actor
Mm-hmm.
professionally because when I was growing up, my sister was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just like understood that we couldn't possibly have two children going on to be actors. Like my
Yeah.
dad's a lawyer, my grandpa was a lawyer, and my grandpa was kind of very old school. So he was like, one of us was supposed to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I'd always when people would ask me what I was going to do when I grew up as a kid, I would say, I don't know, but I'm not going to be an actor like that. My parents would say that too. So, so I graduated from Ohio State and, spent a couple years roaming around, acting here and there, and
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I guess I'm going to be an actor. Actually, that it was kind of a blue period for me. I was like, I was depressed a bit and I was just all over the place, and I had these three ideas. One was go to law school, one was go join a commune, and the other was go to drama school. And so um I went to drama school. I mean, it all kind of, I
Hmm.
went to Erda's
Yeah.
here, actually in Evanston at Northwestern. Erda's.
The Urdas were in Evanston?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
And I remember right before I went in for my audition, um, I called home and my mom said that there was a voice. We had answering machines back then. And on the answering machine, Juilliard had left a message and I got in and I was like, oh, cool. And I went into Erda's and I was so relaxed and and at Erda's was also Illinois Shakespeare Festival. And
Oh.
so I also got cast in the play Hamlet at the Illinois Shakespeare Festival. And and so I was like, okay,
As Ham?
as Hamlet, which which was my first speaking role in a Shakespeare play.
What? That wow, that is a tremendous amount of trust. To like give that to a young
Yeah.
buck who hasn't done Shakespeare.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it was interesting. Uh yeah, I I had learned all of the soliloquies when I was at Ohio State. Just I
Hmm.
don't know why. I just learned them and so okay, here's what
Hmm.
happened. I for Erda's, I had this kind of ridiculous piece
Hmm.
that I called the Elizabethan toothache. Like I came up and said, yes, hello, I'm Michael Milligan. I'm going to be performing a piece called the Elizabethan toothache. And I turned around and I like pulled this giant pair of pliers out of my pocket. And I like turned around and I had the pliers in my mouth and I was like trying to pull it out. And then it was like this monologue. It was like to be or not to be, but it was like to have it out or not. That is the question. Whether I don't remember, but it was like whether 'tis better to, I don't know, suffer the pangs and torments of an aching tooth or something. But it was like the monologue, but it was about this guy um, deciding whether or not he was gonna pull his tooth out.
And you wrote that?
Yes.
I
I mean,
just
it, yes. Um, but you
oh
know,
my
I
god.
did it. I did it very like straightforward. And Cal McLean, who was the artistic director, he called me up afterwards and he was like, "Hey man, can you do the actual speech?" I was like, "Yeah, I did it." He was like, "Can you do another one?" I was like, "Yeah, another one, sure." So yeah, so that was kind of a like the universe being like, okay, here's no law school, put the commune. You can go join a commune later.
Hmm.
Always a possibility. So that was it. I played Hamlet. It was very raw and just kind of intuition, that kind of thing. There are a lot of prominent Chicago actors who were in that production who, if you ask them about it, they might have other things to say about it. But I think there were some really, really great things about it, and then also some things that I'm sure if I watched, I would be annoyed as hell. But I'm really glad that I I had that experience before I went to Juilliard.
Hmm.
Um, like because I had my own idea, I had my own sort of sensibility of what speaking the language could be. And then I went to Juilliard and learned all those, the rules and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that I didn't learn that first. You know what I mean? Like I'm glad that
Yeah.
that stuff super useful, but I think it can be a trap to kind of be indoctrinated in the formalities.
Hmm.
It can take a while to find your way back to a sort of organic sensibility of
Hmm.
what it is.
No, I think that's really true, and I think that's sometimes the reason why people find Shakespeare inaccessible, either the audience or especially actors, because like I still know so many actors that I don't want to touch it. Is sometimes going through all the rules can be quite a lot because then they're learning all these different rules before they've really had a chance to kind of dive into it for themselves. And sometimes too, when like, because I'm sure you've experienced it too. Like, I mean, you have a lot more Shakespeare experience than I do, but even from the little bit of experience that I've had, every director has a different way that they like to approach text,
Yeah,
and
that's
every
true.
text coach has a different way that they like to approach text. So trying to find your own way in the middle of that, sometimes if you
Oh
don't
yeah.
have your own sense of voice and confidence, it can kind of ruin your ability to be on impulse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It can be very daunting and inhibiting, and that's yeah. You brought up Mark Rylance, and it's just so interesting to watch him do Shakespeare, and he's just so far out there, like breaking so many rules, and um and that's an interesting thing to work with him and watched him, and because he's him, everybody's like, oh my God, yeah, yeah. But if you try to do that,
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's like that's a genius, and then like but if you do it, you're the asshole
who are
actor. You're the asshole
you?
actor if you do it.
We just want you to do choreography.
Yeah. No, it's just
Uh,
it's weird. It's like you got to have a certain cultural cachet to be the kind of the raconteur when you do Shakespeare.
yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that's a question of, which comes first, right? I mean, I think with him, he just had kind of a radical um, sensibility about himself, like he was doing that from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and then you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think that's what made him who he is, like, and
Yeah.
eventually made him famous and all that was his sort of just unrelenting commitment to his sense of his own ideal of
Yeah.
being in the moment,
Yeah.
kind of radically in the moment,
Yeah. No, I
which
I I love that because like I mean like we'll definitely talk about it a little bit later. But like it's something that I've always been curious about is that like it seems like he's always stressing like continuing trying to find it. Like I just remember there's a great story that Ethan Hawke told where he was like performing for the Globe, and like they had a bunch of famous actors doing monologues, and they gave Ethan Hawke Hamlet, and he's like, "Oh fuck you, you're trying to embarrass me." Yeah. So, but then
oh,
like,
at the Globe in London.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and so he's just like, "Look, here's what you're gonna do," and like basically he told them a way to just to tell a joke, and so like he told the joke to the audience, then he went right into the monologue. Because it was just
Mm.
kind of like, okay, now there's like raw energy going. And then he just goes into it so he's not thinking about it.
Yeah. Yep. I think um yeah, it's interesting. I saw Ethan Hawke play Hotspur in at Lincoln Center, and
Hotspur.
my girlfriend at the time
Oh, no, I was thinking of someone else. Yeah, but yeah, Hotspur makes sense. Okay.
was in that show, and so I got to kind of see that and interact with him a little bit. He was a really interesting guy, like a real interesting guy.
Yeah.
But also another person, it's interesting, like interacting with and then watching someone with that kind of celebrity, right?
Yeah.
Where they really do have much more licenses granted to them.
Yes.
Although I don't want to say, like that's the kind of riddle. Like, I don't know if it's being granted to them or they granted it to themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Could be, yeah. Just because I think,
Probably a
yeah.
combination of both, I think.
Yeah. Because I think something that I've experienced doing Shakespeare is like, I wish rehearsal process were sometimes 5 to 6 weeks. Because I think sometimes what happens is like we're trying to get the language down.
Yep.
But not just that, but it's like you got to block it quick because now every Shakespeare production they have fights, they probably have music, they probably have a different like its own form of choreography or whatever it is. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. So they got to get to everything quick. So I remember sometimes there'd be times where like I'd want to have that moment where I'd want to play in the sandbox, like, oh, maybe I saunter over here and try this, but it was just like I get cut off immediately
Yeah.
in the middle of blocking. So it's just like I never got to like experiment with those things. And
Yeah.
it feels like for Shakespeare, it's like if you had that little bit of extra time just to kind of be in the sandbox and just kind of be like, let me drift this way, let me go this way,
Yep.
let me go this way and try it.
Yeah.
But sometimes, yeah, just the mechanics of just like being like 2.5, 3 weeks tech and then you go sometimes
Yeah.
isn't just enough time to kind of be like, no, this is language that I want to play with. Like I like literally sometimes I like just putting on my fucking clown nose and just messing around.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very good that's a very valid observation.
Mm-hmm.
And I have
Mm-hmm.
um accepted that the actual rehearsal period is not going to be enough. And so, like for
Hmm.
example, like when I played Iago here at
Yeah.
Chicago Sheets, and like I contacted them ahead of time as a part of the
Yeah.
negotiation of my contract, and I was like, uh, I would like you all to pay me. I mean, this is what I said. I would like you all to hire me 2 weeks early, and I will just come in and run the lines with, you'll provide somebody to run the lines with me and also work with the text coach. And they were like, no, we're not going to pay you an extra 2 weeks, but you can work with Kevin Goodall ahead of time, and we will provide you with someone to run the lines with. So anyway, like, yeah, but like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I did do that, and um, yeah, I mean, I have like a whole system of like labor that happens before rehearsal starts that
Yeah.
is probably more than the actual rehearsal period. I mean, just in terms of like, energy spent. And it's like, it's really all about like, you got to go through so much that the language needs to be second, second nature,
Yeah.
so that you're not doing any of this. You're not doing antithesis. You're not doing, a trochee. You're not doing any of that stuff. You've absorbed it all. You are, you know, and even more importantly, like ongoingly, you're training your voice, you're training your imagination, your body, so that you
Mm-hmm.
have all that stuff in your repertoire,
Yeah.
right? You know how to use pitch, rhythm, um, whatever vocal to have vocal variety, but you're
Yeah.
not in the moment, like orchestrating your voice,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is my that's my that's my that's my sermon for the day.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. You don't need to
you're
sing the song the same way. You don't need to
if
sing the song the
you're
same way
if
every night.
you're on if you're doing Shakespeare and you're like performing choreography of the text, like I'm out, man. I want to leave because I can't, because that completely interferes with the actual resonance. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a veil that covers up the resonance of your voice. Your voice is,
Mm-hmm.
you've worked on your voice. You've absorbed all of that technical stuff to the point where you don't need it anymore. You're
Yeah.
and what you need is the thoughts.
Yes. Yeah. They
Oh,
just they need to yeah, it's just like let the thought flow in and the language comes and then like you have drive to move
yeah.
to it.
I mean, it's like to be or not to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do like, okay, maybe you're working on it very early and you're like, to be or not to be, right? And that's just a way of indicating that those are two different things,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But what are those things?
Mm-hmm.
Those things are have to be so real. What is to be and what is not to be. Like those are
Mm-hmm.
so such different things. and so personal
Yeah.
and tangible in your mind that, and you have, you're like, you have those things with you on the stage, those thought imaginative
Hmm.
energy that the audience experiences it
Oh my
because
God.
you're
Sorry.
doing.
Cat's going.
But it's
Cat's is screaming back here, but yeah. Yeah.
so something like that.
No, no, I agree with that because like if it's organic and like like your feet are planted and it's alive, it's all like acting in general is always so much more fun to watch. Something that I was thinking about, especially with Shakespeare, was actually it's oddly enough some of the most fun I've ever had with Shakespeare was honestly doing Zoom readings with friends
Mm,
because there was something about it too where I was thinking about like coming to each play with like a sense of innocence to it. Like, I'm just going to allow it to be the first time I've ever heard this. Because, I think sometimes what happens with Shakespeare or classical plays, everyone's got their preconceived notions about what a thing
yeah,
is. And then all of a sudden you're letting it's kind of toxifying your process as opposed to just reading it and like what's actually on the page and not what somebody told you was on the page. It's like when someone tells you like
yeah,
this
sure,
this is the story of the Bible and then you read the Bible and you're like
yeah,
no, the Bible feels way different to me. What are you talking about?
yeah,
Like, so when you're allowed to read things like a little differently. Like I remember reading Midsummer with some friends. Like it was during COVID. It was super fun. We were just because we were just fucking around. But Midsummer's one of those shows where everybody has a take
right,
and everybody has a way that they want to beef up the comedy. So actually, just reading Midsummer and just hearing the language, I remember that was the first time where I went, "Oh my god, Helena and Hermia's relationship is really rich.
mm,
There's so much more here than what we normally see.
yeah,
How come I don't see that?"
yeah.
So it's really
I think,
interesting sometimes when you have like the license to kind of say, "I'm going to come to this from a place of innocence, from a place of trying to see something with new eyes," and you're like, "Wow, this text lights up in a way I've never understood before."
yeah, no, that's great. I mean, we receive so many cliches about it. I mean, Romeo, I think is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, Romeo even has its own meaning, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, oh, he's a real Romeo. Like,
Mm-hmm.
actually, no, Romeo is not a Romeo.
No.
He's actually like like he's like a study, like the next play he's going to be Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, before he sees Juliet, he's like he's like
Mm-hmm.
this kind of melancholic,
Yeah.
philosophical guy
Yeah.
who's not Romeo at all.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
and so that's interesting.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like, let's be real. Romeo is just somebody who gets really moody over his blue balls. Like he, he really does. Ah,
Well, that's universally true, isn't it?
it is. If there's anything to take from this interview, it's the universal truth of blue balls. But, all right, but anyway, so back to the career stuff. So so you do Hamlet, which I imagine had to be a very interesting experience. Then going into Juilliard, what was Juilliard like at that time? Because I do feel like at the time that you went, as opposed to when I went to school for conservatory, I feel like that there was like there's the much more of have a thick skin attitude, and we're gonna kind of like you know make sure
Yeah.
that you can take everything that comes at you, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's true. I mean, it was kind of in a in between space between those extremes. I mean, I from stories of people who were there, before me, it was much more like that. Like the story was like they would do cuts and they would post the cuts during the Christmas party. So like people would be up in the
Oh my
party and then they
god!
would I mean stuff like that, but when I was there, I think it was less extreme than that. I know it's become much more much different now. I think it's a much more supportive environment. I
Okay.
loved it. I mean, again, like I had come out of like a 2 year kind of dark night of the soul and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was a place where, like, when I got there, I was like, yes, this is what I need. I need this structure. I'm so grateful to be here. And I just like, I was like a monk, I just really leaned into it. It was what I need to like activate my energy and in a way that I'd never experienced before. And yeah, and I mean, I say that, and I did all the sort of Juilliard stuff, but at the same time that I was going through the program, I also had my own um, relationship with one of my teachers who became my mentor, Felix Ivanov. I'm sure I talked about him when we were driving a lot, but he was our stage combat teacher, but he was
Mm-hmm.
so much more. He had been the head of movement at the Moscow Art Theater School,
Yeah.
and
Okay. Right. 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 Mm-hmm.
he was just like a genius. And a lot of people couldn't like understand him because his English was not, he was working it out, but I could tell immediately like, oh, this is the guy I want to study from. And so I would meet with him before school twice a week,
Mm-hmm.
and then I lived with him my last year at school, and he was my guy, and his teaching was, it was different than I think like the overarching philosophy of Juilliard, and so I appreciate like both. But in my own sort of life and craft as an actor, I've like gone his way, and you know like, I mean, it also like he's a movement guy, and
Mm-hmm.
he also was his other passions were he's an incredible musician, which he also inspired in me, and then also he's a martial artist,
Yeah.
and really into Chinese internal martial arts, which then I have has become a lifelong passion of mine that I'm practicing in tandem with being an actor. And to me, they're like completely fused together. It's just like a intense like body practice,
Mm-hmm.
body energy. Like we learn neutral in school. You are
Mm-hmm.
exposed to this idea of neutral,
Neutral body. Yep.
but
Mm.
like in his internal systems of like Tai Chi, Xingyi, Bagua, these are the systems, or Qigong, like neutral is just the beginning. Like, like it's like emptiness. Emptiness is has no bottom. Like it can be developed infinitely,
Yeah.
And then from there, like the idea of having a center, right? And moving from your center, and like that's just the beginning. Like you can develop and fortify your center. Are you as fortified as a mountain or a tree? Like we
Mm-hmm.
can cultivate this kind of and then from there, like fluidity, you
Yeah.
know. One of the bagwas is this martial art, but it's like after you have emptiness, and then after you cultivate the center, then there's like the 10,000 things, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is sort of Taoist philosophy or Buddhist philosophy. Like 10,000 things means like all of the phenomena that arise in existence, right? And from a body practice, that means like every little nuance, every little change is means something different, right? And so for
Mm-hmm.
an actor, like on the stage, like sort of starting to cultivate this awareness of every little thing, it's infinite variety,
Hmm.
right? Everything, every moment, every nuance, there's infinite shades of color. And I think that's been a that's been a just something that I've been kind of working with
Yeah.
in my my life and my craft.
Yeah. No, I know, but I really like that though, because it's like, to me, I keep thinking about like how you get activated by stimulus, I think sometimes too, like, depending on what kind of training you got, whether like, especially if you got like Meisner trained or something like that, how sometimes I feel like people focus so much on their feelings,
Oh
they
yeah,
focus,
yeah.
they focus a lot on that, but sometimes I feel like that's the wrong focus. And I feel
Mm,
like that sometimes it is just like, it's more about taking notice not only of your body, but of the
yeah.
stimulus around you, because like your stimulus is the activation that you need to go somewhere, you know and it's just like, so when you're talking about the channeling of energy, I mean, like, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot more. Is just like, okay, what do I need to do to get activated?
Mm,
I need to get
yeah,
activated right now,
yeah.
so then I can go somewhere, and then that way those clashes of energy, all those can happen, because someone else is going to bring their own kind of chaos into the room, and so then
Yeah.
that way we're going to meet each other in these like different ways that's going to crash and flow in very fun ways,
Yeah,
hopefully.
yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's like yes, there is that and this is something just coming here as an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
I think that influence of Meisner is so prevalent and strong in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's not just Meisner, it's also all of the incredible like deep roots of the improv movement.
Yeah.
Like I think those things, two things are very connected
Yeah.
and
Two
like
things that teach you how to listen. A lot of listening.
teach you how to listen and yes, how to listen and respond to partner. Um, but I do think also like yeah, there's other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I also like I um have a deep relationship with the Stella Adler studio.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Oppenheim, is the who runs the studio and is Stella's grandson. He directs my one man
Mm-hmm.
show, and I've
Mm.
taught there, and we kind of used um, my play Mercy Killers. Like I really, we were talking about Stella Adler technique, like what is it, and really, uh, it's imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I came out of working with Mark Rylance, and in some
Mm-hmm.
ways, the one man show was like I wrote that because I was not allowed to experiment the way Mark Rylance was
Yeah.
experimenting when I was cast in a play. So I was like, I need to have this experience. So I'm going to write a play and I can do whatever I want in it. And
Yeah.
so the experiment was there are all of these really rich circumstances that the character is experiencing. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
walk out on the stage and really be with those imagined circumstances and let the play unfold, like really doing a deep experiment in that. And I performed that play over 300 times, and I learned so much from it. I don't think that I've ever really gotten to go as deep in anything else as I did in that show. I mean, it's
Yeah.
partly because it's like just the freedom of doing a one person show that you're like the boss of.
Oh, yeah. And it's, yeah, I mean, especially, I mean, like, you probably have so much more agency to do things since it's literally your piece of material. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
something that wanted to ask about. So it's like the genesis of wanting to do it was to find something where you had a little bit more agency to do something. But then I know Mercy Killers, a lot of it has to do with burnout, right? For nurses, right?
No, no, that's the second place side effects.
Side effects.
But
So which
no,
ones was Mercy Killers?
Mercy Killers is also about the healthcare system. I mean, the impetus was that creative exploration, but it was also really like a political, I wanted to do something political, And it also kind of came out of Occupy Wall Street. Like I got to experience that. I marched down there a lot and it was a big deal to me to experience what was happening there and kind of
Mm-hmm.
touch like be with a group of people who were trying to envision a different system, you know what I mean, or try to create change and transformation,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and uh, and so that piece was something that I wanted to do, and also just had real personal experiences with the healthcare system. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's something
yeah,
that
so
I'm glad that we're having more conversations around the healthcare system in general. I mean, like it is a thing where it's just like, you know, thanks to someone like Bernie Sanders who was just like, there's other ways of doing this, and
yeah,
so it's like I feel like that's kind of emboldened more people to kind of share
yeah,
the about the predatory nature of some of these things. But
yeah.
I'm
So Mercy Killers is the story of a man from sort of rural Ohio whose wife has cancer, and it's in the wake of the financial crisis. So they lose their house. Everything that can go wrong goes
mhm,
wrong. And and he's also has a kind of libertarian sensibility. So he's just trying to take it all on himself and fix everything. And he's grappling with his own sense of identity and failure. You know what I mean? And so
yeah.
it's about the healthcare system, but it's also just about that kind of ethos and the sort of failed social contract and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Uh, and I have to say, like, the first draft of it was very polemical, and it was really like a guy like me preaching about healthcare,
Mhm. Yeah.
and really investing in that guy. He kind of resented and resisted the sort of caricature, and I think the play became much richer as I allowed the voice of that character of a really kind of forgotten part of America. I think like Appalachia, I think is a place that people don't really understand, and don't have a lot of compassion for people from there.
Yeah, and
Uh,
especially I think something you could say about them is like just people who consistently get abandoned.
oh yeah, yeah, and this was like 2013. So as I was performing it over the next 5 years, I was like, and I performed it in so many interesting places in collaboration with, you know, like California Nurses Association up and down
Mhm.
California, or West Virginia, like single payer organization in I mean, people advocating for
Yeah.
uh, Medicare for all way, way back
Yeah.
in rural West Virginia, and like, or Texas, and Pennsylvania, and all over the country. Um, I
Mhm.
felt like I was witnessing. Uh, I had to perform the play the day after Donald Trump was elected in 2016, and
Motherfucker.
I was like,
Oh
and
god.
the character I play
Oh
wearing an
man.
Ohio State hat, which is a big red hat, you know, and I was like,
No.
oh man, I mean, this guy's what happened to this guy, and this sort of anger that he's expressing, and the inability of sort of coastal liberal America to
Mhm.
accept and hear what this guy's going through. It kind of, I felt like, oh, this gave rise to Donald Trump, that
Yeah.
the working class has been ignored. And like,
Mhm.
I would perform the play in sort of big metropolitan areas. People would say, like in New York, like, oh, well, why, this play, why is it relevant? We passed Obamacare. Like, this guy, what's this guy's problem? Like, and I'm like,
I mean, because Obamacare is not that great. Like
well, and
it's
also,
so expensive. No, I
well,
remember
I mean,
the first time like granted, it's got some good things to it, the pre-existing
yeah,
conditions, other things,
sure, sure, right.
but I remember the first time I got health insurance was through Obamacare. Luckily, I got it through my employer right now, but I got it through Obamacare. And I remember talking to my mom about it, and I'm just like, what does all of this mean? Because it was the first time I'm being introduced to deductibles and all this other stuff. And then, like, but not only being introduced to like out of pocket, and then I
Right.
just went, this is a scam.
Right. And you're like, well, I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm not.
Literally, I
So
didn't.
it ends up really just being like a,
I destroyed my teeth because I didn't want to go to the dentist.
yeah, yeah. So I think
Yeah.
the other thing is that, um, in New York State, and I traveled all over the country, and so I became very intimate with because I would do talkbacks with, um, doctors and nurses after the show, and so I felt like I had to understand what the healthcare system was in each state. And that's the thing that people don't understand. Like in New
Mm-hmm.
York State, Obamacare is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
California, it's pretty good because they subsidize it.
Through Medicaid. Yeah.
And like you basically can get on, the basic plan, and it's run by the same systems as Medicaid. And so actually Medicaid can be really great in
Yeah.
in New York State or whatever. And so, but people don't understand in like Florida, for example. I don't know
Mm.
what it is today. I think it might be changing, but there are states where for a long time where they didn't accept the Medicaid
Expansion. Yeah.
expansion,
Mm.
where Medicaid is not for poor people. Like you can't qualify for Medicaid just by being poor. You have to um, be a single mother and poor, or
Mm-hmm.
have very specific. You can't just be like,
You have to be Brett Favre trying to fund a volleyball stadium. I mean, like there are rules here.
yeah. And there was all sort like in Utah, there's a gap where
Yeah.
if you make under $18,000, you actually don't even qualify for the Obamacare subsidies because it was designed that Medicaid would be there. So, I mean, I remember meeting a guy out there who lied about his income. Like some
Mm-hmm.
places people lie so that they are under, right? They say, oh, I only make this much. So they
Mm-hmm.
qualify. This guy lied and said he made more than he made, so he would qualify for a subsidy. I mean, it's just like
That's
torture.
crazy. That's crazy.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So,
So now let's
yeah.
talk about taxes.
Yeah, no. We're absolutely no, fucking no. Fucking no. But like I just want to say one quick thing and then just like ask a question about like the art of it in general. But like
Yeah.
I think that's what's so interesting about the South to me is that there's something
The
about the
what?
South. The South. There's something
Oh,
interesting
the
about the
South.
South
Yeah.
because I feel like there's something about it that brings out the worst and best in people because it's like you have the horrific racist that we all know that's there, but then I think we underestimate how much of our most radical and transformative politic comes out of there.
Mm,
You
yeah.
know, like just like how much took place in Mississippi, Alabama, all these different places, like during the civil rights march. Even some of the people that I follow on social media, like have some of the most radical politics I've ever seen in my life, and it's coming from the fact that like they grew up in places that want to like massively deprive them, and so it's like they have this wicked imagination about like what the future can be in terms of like different ways of abolishing the system, and I find it to be really really interesting. So,
Yeah. I think I
yeah,
think that is interesting. I
hmm
don't I don't really profess to have much understanding of the South, honestly. I mean, I do feel connected to and have
hmm
more insight about Appalachia,
hmm yeah,
but I do think that, and I think like for a lot of Americans, um, you know, in the North and also coasts, like they conflate Appalachia with the South. And
yeah,
I mean, there's overlapping, like there is
yeah,
Appalachia in that kind of goes over the South, but like historically,
hmm
those groups and the sort of other
hmm
Southern groups, like they were often very much in conflict because
hmm
Appalachia is like settled by Scots and Irish and really
hmm
like have had an experience from the beginning of being completely
Yeah.
like outcast and just shit on, by the government. And so there is this like really deep anti suspicion of the government. They're just gonna take away my whiskey still, all
Yeah.
that just what do they don't do it. And so unfortunately, of just politics, you know, Appalachia has we think of now as red, and it's like Trump country, but it hasn't always been that way.
Hmm.
It was like Roosevelt, it was you know, um, the New Deal. Like
Yeah.
that's where so
No,
much.
I think we the I mean, there's so much to get into the weeds about it, but I think we underestimate like literally everywhere how much good work people are doing in terms
Yeah,
of trying to change the body politic there, and it's our fault truly for
yep.
not paying attention to it. So a question in terms of creating a solo show. Like, this is something that I've always been fascinated by, have entertained, but I'm kind of curious on how, since you're the one writing it and you're the one performing, creating the story, like what did that do to facilitate your own growth as an actor, storyteller, artist?
Um, well, it was a completely transformative experience on many levels. I mean, as an actor, I had the freedom to, and I have to say, it's a particular kind of solo show. Um, I grew up. I also worked with my mom as a storyteller, so
Mm-hmm.
I, that's from an early age in me, kind of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually my mom did Appalachian folk tales. So that kind of character was, you know, a kind of a tall tale teller. Like that's a sort of style,
Yeah.
Appalachian country. And the stories are, go all the way back to England and Ireland and stuff like that. They just changed the characters a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but but I really wanted it to be not kind of storytelling that way
Yeah.
and not like a narrator, but it's actually a guy in the moment talking to a cop that you don't see. And
Mm.
it's all, there's no break in the action. So it's kind of observing
Mm.
sort of, you know, the whatever Aristotelian stuff
Yeah.
unities,
Yeah.
but there's no break, and so it's really natural kind of naturalism, real experiment in naturalism, and
Hmm.
aside
Yeah.
from the sort of concentration of you're talking to someone who's not there, but
Yeah.
I'm not talking to the audience. I'm not, you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah. It's not like Dale Orlander Smith or Anna Devere Smith or something like that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love, there's so many varieties of solos. It's just
Mm-hmm.
such a wide, but and that's what my other play was too. I just fascinated by this exercise, Um, and so that really, as I said, it, it allowed me to do this experiment in kind of really just going all in on the imaginative circumstances and really building those out and just developing the character and then just letting it rip, you know
Yeah.
and letting see what happens, and I really just went far with that, and that was, yeah. When
Yeah.
I took the show to the Edinburgh Fringe
Yeah.
Festival, and I got there, and my director Tom was there with me, and we were there for a couple days, and there were like 5 people coming to the show,
Yeah.
and he is like, so Mike, this is 30 shows. Like you do it every day for a month. He's like, what are you gonna do if this is what it is? Like if just 5 people come. And it just came to me, and I said to him, it just came out of my heart. I was like, I'm gonna learn to be a real actor.
Hmm.
And what that meant was that I wasn't going to do the show at any less than 100%. And that
Mm-hmm.
I was going to honor that guy's circumstances and what
Mm-hmm.
happens to him, and let it break my heart
Yeah.
every day. And I did it. I did it. I was able to do that. And that was a really transformative experience. And people came.
Yeah.
And I won the Fringe First Award.
Hell yes. Hell yes. That's amazing.
But it started out as like 5 people,
Mm-hmm.
and then more people, and then more people, and then some reviews came in, and then and then the kind of 5 stars in the Scotsman came in,
Mm-hmm.
and that was actually the Scotsman. They send somebody, and then if that critic wants to give 5 stars, they send another person,
Hmm.
and then if that person agrees, then they send a third person,
Interesting.
and if they all three, then they give you the Fringe First Award.
That's a fascinating
But
system.
I didn't know that. I just because I was also the producer. So
Yeah.
I see like Scotsman is coming and I'm like, oh fuck. Shit. So I get through it
Yeah.
and nothing comes out. And then
Mm-hmm.
I see again and I see again. And then someone explained to me
Mm-hmm.
and then it came out. And then as soon as
Mm-hmm.
it came out, it sold out the rest. I mean, it was just like that kind of experience. Okay, so this is the other
Mm-hmm.
thing about the solo show was like aside from that, like the acting stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
as a producer or creator, like to be in that, like where you're, I mean, as an actor, it's cool to not read reviews and stuff like that, right? I don't read but as a producer, you got to read the reviews.
Oh my
in,
God.
in Edinburgh, you have to read the reviews because when they come out, you got to put the review on your postcard because that's how people decide what show they're going to see. You staple you staple all the reviews on your flyer and you stand on the corner and you're like, "Come see my show. Come see my." I mean, it's so incredibly humiliating and awesome
Yeah.
and liberating because you really are like, "Please, I have something. I want you to see my show. Come
Yeah.
see my show."
Yeah.
And
It's worth coming to. Yeah. No, like honestly, but also let's be honest about this whole I don't read review. That's such bullshit. Like like I think it's a good rule to not talk about it in the space.
yeah,
I think that's a very good rule. But like
yes.
I'm not gonna fucking bullshit you to act like I don't search it, thinking about if I can put something on my website. I'm always just like, ooh, do I got a little blurb? Is there a little
Yeah.
blurb? Like they could just say the show's shit, but I'm like, is there a little blurb for me? Like I do that all the time. I do it all
Yeah.
the time,
In, in
and
this
like I hate to admit it, but like I do it.
in this thing, I've performed it all over, and so it's been reviewed so many times,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been everything from like uh gratuitous, like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say something crude, but
I don't give a fuck.
like a blowjob of a review. You know what I
Oh
mean?
god,
Everything to that, from that to like, this guy sucks. Get this guy out of town, right?
Jesus Christ.
Everything in between. So, I mean, that's like a great experience. And what I did learn from that is to understand, like, start to see a pattern of like, oh, the reviews are as much about the person writing it as, right? And so I really would find,
Mm-hmm.
like, for example, in certain papers and in certain places representing certain kind of socio-political whatever, that's where the review would be like, well, this is interesting, but kind of irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally like that stuff in 2014, 2015, like, well, we did Obamacare. This is a kind of like retrospective of, that kind of thing. And then in other places, from other points of view, like this is, he's like touching something very true.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like, for example, I did it here at the Greenhouse Theater.
Oh, interesting.
And and I mean, it was an incredible experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was the hardest experience of my life because I did both of my one man shows
Mm-hmm.
back to back in the same. like evening with an intermission.
Oh God. Oh God.
So it
Fuck.
was a, I think it was very powerful. It was a marathon for actor and maybe audience too.
Mhm.
But again, like as a producer type, um, there was there's like a nightclub. I don't know, like beneath one of the
Mhm.
theaters over there,
Oh, right,
right?
right, right. Mhm.
And like they had agreed that there's no sound from this time to this time or whatever, but that like the night that the critics were there, it's like I'm acting and it's like boom, 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 for 2 hours. Like there's
Yeah.
days going, and
Yeah.
so I'm just like
No,
flipping out.
no. Sometimes you just gotta
And
roll. I just remember one of the first professional shows I did was Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. I was playing one of the
yeah.
tragedians who are dead on stage. Below is an Irish bar where it was for hockey fans. It was in the playoffs. I'm laying there fucking dead. Everyone just got killed. Everyone's laying dead on stage. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are there in shock, just going, "What is happening?"
Oh
That
man.
was right when the Sharks scored a goal in overtime, and you hear, "Yeah,
Oh
bang,
yeah,
bang, 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 bang," and you hear a bell go off because they got some fucking cowbell down there, and we're all just dead on stage, just going.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean that shit just
That
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That yeah. So with that though, like I did not give a good performance.
Mm,
And in the review, actually, I loved it because it was
mm,
like it like ripped apart my acting. It was like he's, his his performance is riddled with all sorts of like naturalistic ticks and all this stuff. And like I'm reading it and I'm like, yeah,
that's the
because
point.
no, like
Yeah.
because there's like this disco club going on downstairs, and I am like not, you know what I mean? But after like tearing apart my acting, she was like, but the language and the words and the play itself are something. I mean, it was like really great review of Mike Milligan as a writer, which
Mm.
which is what I have like total imposter syndrome about.
Yeah.
Like my whole uh sense about the whole journey of this solo show is like, yeah, I kind of wrote this thing and I kind of like make it look good with my acting skills. so
Yeah.
so it was actually like so affirming for this person to be like, this guy is a terrible actor, but really, but has written this wonderful play. So I was like,
Oh my
oh,
god. You're
cool.
like, "Oh, that was where I needed to get affirmed." Okay, that's fine. Yeah. All right. So, questions about the Broadway experiences. So, the first one, August Osage County. What is it like to be the actor walking into the middle of a run? Because I feel like the one time I did it, I feels like, you are allowed to some degree to kind of own what you're doing, but at the end of the day, it still feels like you have to honor what was there before, because it's like, you might have had people that have done it 200 times, 300 times. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like you're walking into a well-oiled machine and you got to just be able to jump right in.
Yeah. Uh, it was incredible experience. I just like like they auditioned for this replacement, and it was like a year. Like I did it for just under a year.
Mhm.
Um, and they like auditioned everybody in New York City.
Mhm.
Like, the breakdown was not me at all. Like it was describing Jan Jan Barford, like,
Mhm.
like tall, whatever,
Yeah.
not like this skinny little guy. And so I was like, okay, we've looked at everybody and let's start calling in people that aren't the people that we thought of.
Yeah.
So it was like really, really towards the end of many, many rounds. And I felt like, there's no way. I saw the show, it blew me away. I saw it before like I had any inkling I would ever audition for it or anything. It was like one of the greatest things had ever seen.
It's a fucking
And
killer script. It really is.
yeah, yeah. And and I went in and right before I went in, I was like, all right, I'm not gonna get this, but I'm just gonna show them how a guy from Westerville, Ohio does it, you know.
Yeah.
And I felt, the part Little Charles really resonated with me. And I think I gave a really, really great audition.
Mm-hmm.
It was just very personal. And it was Anna Shapiro, and she was like,
Mm-hmm.
I finished, and she just said, "That was freaking fantastic.
Damn.
Do it again." I did it again, and it was still, I still felt
Yeah.
very close to it, which is something that, you know, most auditions I would not. The second time through, I would probably like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or the first time through wouldn't have been good. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but it just felt kind of faded in me,
Mm-hmm.
and so anyway, yeah. But it was I think it was a little different than a lot of replacement stuff, which can just be often actually just the production stage manager can put someone in. You know what I mean?
Really?
But yeah, sometimes. But
Huh.
we did work with, and I went in with a couple other people. I went in with Joanna Day, who's like just one of the greatest New York actresses. She took over for Amy Morton.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
because a lot of the original cast were going to London.
Right.
And
Yes.
so, um, but I like Deanna Dunnigan was already out at that point. It was Estelle Parsons. So,
Oh my God, you got to do it with Estelle Parsons. That's incredible.
yeah, yeah. So so we rehearsed it. We kind of learned it with the
Mm-hmm.
understudies,
Yeah.
which was great. I mean, like the understudy pool was deep,
Mm-hmm.
it was a deep, deep, deep pool of talent.
Yeah.
And they all went on too, during the run,
Mm-hmm.
like many times. And so then after kind of learning it for a couple weeks with the production stage manager, like just learning the blocking and that kind of stuff, then Anna Shapiro came and worked with us. She's just the greatest. She's so great. Um, and then Tracy Letts also would come, and
Mm-hmm.
man, those two together are just they
Yeah.
just they're just so the things they say are just so great, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of see why they do so many plays together. It's just like there is something very simpatico about the way that they work.
Yeah, and they complement each other well
Yeah.
too.
Mm-hmm.
But like I was sitting there, as a nobody, because this was really it was a big break for me. Like I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I got the call, I was going to class, and I got the call, and I just couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it.
Yeah.
I don't even think
How many rounds of auditions did you do at that point?
I don't even think I didn't do any callback. It was just because it was towards the end.
Yeah.
So they were doing callbacks, and then they just brought in some other people because they weren't really seeing what they wanted. And so I just went in on a Friday afternoon, and they called me that same evening. And and
Wow.
I was about and I was about to cross the street, and I hung up the phone, and I was about to cross the street, and I had this terror that I would get hit by a car. that I
Yeah.
would that I had to be really careful until I actually did the show,
Yeah.
because or I could get hit by a car and not get to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like a real terror. Um, and then like, man, I had been working so hard in my career and in regional theater and stuff and feeling like, man, that when I finally went on and did my first show, I felt totally relaxed. I felt totally at home and um like I belonged there. And it was a great experience. What was your question?
That was incredible. I was just asking how many rounds of auditions that was, but like
Oh yeah.
I think for me it was the main question was just like when you walk into a well-oiled machine is like I find that to be an interesting challenge. You know.
It wasn't though. It wasn't. It was, and I think this is, to Anna Shapiro's credit, Tracy Letts' credit, the Steppenwolf ensemble credit, because there were folks who remained in the show. And so they were really like, as opposed to it being a well-oiled machine, they were just kind of upholding the aesthetic. You know what I mean? And the
Mhm.
aesthetic was that you're there. You
Mhm.
got to fucking bring it, right?
Yeah, yeah. The,
That's
the
it.
the the
So
kitchen the kitchen sink reputation. Just go. Yeah,
you got,
yeah.
and it kind of like
Hmm.
it culminated in this really completely unique experience. Yes. And there were people coming in and out. Like
Hmm.
there were like three or four actresses that played Ivy, from multiple understudies
Damn,
to Sally Murphy. Um, you
Sally
know,
Murphy.
I think there were three of them in one weekend.
Holy
We had
fuck.
three Ivies in one weekend.
Three Ivies.
No, it was crazy. We had this incredible understudy who played, who covered um, both, all three sisters, and then she eventually did go. I think she did eventually get to play for a while, which was cool. And then I think she might have done the national. She did the national tour, I think, too. But uh, yeah. Oh, so this like peak experience was the very last show.
Hmm.
They just wanted, I guess, I don't know who, um, Tracy, Anna, Rondi Reed, like, she was the original Maddie Faye,
Yeah.
but she left the production and she was performing next door in Wicked. But
What?
but like I think, I don't know. Like we just got the word this Sunday morning. Oh, uh, Elizabeth Ashley is sick. She's not going to be
Mm.
playing Maddie Faye. Uh, but we're going to have Rondi Reed come in and play Maddie Faye.
Yeah,
So
because she won the
somehow,
Tony for it, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. So somehow they'd arranged with the producers of Wicked. I mean, it was like to let her out so she could come and do the last performance of August Osage County, which she hadn't done for a year. I don't know, for a while, right?
Hmm.
Um, and we didn't rehearse it. Like she just came to the fight call because there's a little
Hmm.
action. And then the stage manager introduced us. She's like, okay, I'd never met her before. We said hello. And the next time I saw her was on the stage. She's my mom. And it was, wow. It was so incredible because Elizabeth Ashley was kind of like a mom who was smothering and infantilizing, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, Rondi Reed would not even look me in the eye because she was so ashamed of me.
Oh man.
And I had no idea, right? And so I'm like looking at us, and it was so,
Did that crush you in the moment?
uh, no, I mean like her
Like,
Maddie
yeah.
Faye.
Yeah.
Like the relationship was, oh, okay. I mean, it was incredible. It was really rich, but it was just so radically different. And it wouldn't, I don't think you would have that experience um, unless it was someone, you know what I mean? Like she
Mhm.
performed the play 400 times, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like she was just going on.
Hmm.
So it was like a different, it kind of reminded me of like, the 19th century where like
You had your
uh,
repertoire, and
Edwin
yeah,
Booth comes to
yeah,
Chicago and he
yeah,
plays Othello with the local
yeah,
whatever. And they just like come together. They both like have performed these roles hundreds and hundreds of times. And you're seeing like these two kind of people who have mastery of their parts, just but they haven't done it together. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Just kind of, it was a cool experience. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's only one of those things that's like under those circumstances it's going to happen. Like you're not going to see that anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's,
And then
it,
and then the other kind of unique thing about that run was at the end of the run, Estelle Parsons left and um she was replaced by Felicia Rashad.
right. Yes, I remember that because I remember there was a lot of articles that were coming out about like should there be a Black Violet. Like I remember there was a lot of articles getting written about that.
Right, right. Yeah, and it was I mean, we're like backstage, we get the news, we're like, "Oh, I'm like, "Oh, does this mean what does it mean? Am I going to get replaced by Malcolm Jamal Warner or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, am I going to and then, we rehearsed with her and she's great. She's like kind of in between Deanna Dunnigan and Estelle Parsons. Like, I mean, she
Mhm.
was just great.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's three
and-
titans doing that same
yeah,
role.
yeah. But um, but it was interesting, like nobody nobody seemed to care. Like the audience didn't
Yeah.
seem to like have any, what is this? What is that? It was just and also um she wasn't I don't know that I heard explicitly a conversation, but as far as I was aware, she was just playing Violet Weston, this like white lady from Oklahoma. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like this
Yeah.
mean, old, bitter, racist white lady from Oklahoma,
Mhm.
right? Which was a totally kind of, I don't know. And it just worked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's also some other conversations to be had too about like, let's say you put someone of a different race in there. There are different meanings that come out of that.
Sure.
When someone in a different body like embodies something and imbues something, it it it
Yeah.
supersedes a whole different meaning to it. Like I remember actually something that I heard that I thought would have been fascinating was I heard that in our production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof that they were considering a Black Maggie, which
Oh,
I like. I heard certain parties actually really wanted it. I'm not going to get into the details about it, but sorry for a private conversation. But
okay.
the reason why I found that so fucking interesting was some of the lines that she had. And then you consider the body politic of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, where you're like, okay, so she says, born poor, raised poor, expect to die poor. Who, that sounds richer coming from a black woman's mouth who is married to somebody living on a plantation. And now she's faking giving birth to this white man who owns a plantation, and now who is going to be the next keepers of the land
Hmm.
where people were formerly enslaved? It's going to be black people.
Hmm.
That's really interesting when you talk about like the shift in legacy of a place and can add this richness even though that it's not in the text, but in terms of just like when you think about different aspects of legacy and what that could mean for that family, it creates a new meaning to that play.
Hmm. Well, I know. I mean, to me, that's a little bit of a different, like, that's a little different. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it totally valid, but
Yeah.
like I'm assuming if they did that, that the we are accepting that Maggie is a black woman, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that wasn't what was going on in
Oh,
with
for
Felicia
for
Rashad and
for
August
August.
Osage
Okay.
County.
But even with that, even
Yeah,
if
totally. Yeah, people,
even
of
if
course,
that's
there's
not
like,
the intention of August to say that
right,
Violet is a black woman,
sure.
a black body in space creates different meaning, you know. And so like just because it is coming from somebody else's mouth and can
Yeah.
create a like, you know, because it's kind of like, you know, maybe like in somebody else's body, like someone saying certain things imbues different meaning on something because it's coming from their body, and so it translates
Yeah, I
differently
mean,
to the audience who's
I think
watching.
all that lives in the realm of the individual spectator,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So even if that's not in
But
the
I mean,
space of like, let's say we do
yeah,
like we didn't discuss this, there's
right.
still new meaning that exists.
Yes. But I mean, as an actor, like I think what Felicia Rashad was, I think she was having a unique experience that
Yeah.
um I don't, is probably controversial.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I'm glad. And
Mm-hmm.
like I look for hope in a distant future that that's something that more people can explore.
Oh my God, absolutely. So the other experiences on Broadway, the main things out. So you did Labette, and you both it did Jerusalem with Mark Rylance. The main things that I'm really interested in is number one, working with a megastar has to be daunting in its own way when you're in space with someone who has the reputation that he has. So I'm kind of curious on number one, what it's like to try to go into rehearsal when someone has a big reputation and like what it means to try to hold your own in a space like that. But also, what are the things that you took from him after that was done?
Yeah. Well, Labette was first, and I mean that was three megastars. That was Mark Rylance, David Hyde Pierce,
Mm-hmm.
and Joanna Lumley, who is
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
cute. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's. Did you ever watch Absolutely Fabulous?
I know the title. I haven't seen it.
Well, she's like British royalty, like
Okay.
the TV star,
Okay.
um, and just the great like the three of them together were like I can't imagine three better celebrities to work with. They were
Yeah.
just like they were just trying to outdo each other in their graciousness. Although, very different personalities. But
Mm-hmm.
Mark, uh, he like the director had a commitment to his wife that he was going to go on this vacation
Interesting.
during this rehearsal process. So it was a
Mm-hmm.
part of his deal of participation that he would be gone. And so Mark, I don't know how it was organized behind the scenes, if Mark's thing was first or the director was first, but they like Mark, David Hyde Pierce, um, the other kind of couple of larger characters. This guy, Stephen Wemette. I don't know if you've ever seen Slings and Arrows, if that's a show that you're
Oh, I
familiar.
love Slings and Arrows. It's great.
Stephen Wemette is the sort of the dead artistic director who's appearing as a ghost.
Oh my God, he's so funny.
So so
Yeah.
he was in the play, and those like the other stars of that show, the two leads, they came to see Labette and we got to meet them. And for me, that was cool because
Mm-hmm.
I love that show. But um, Mark had this idea that because Labette is the story of this acting troupe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we spent a week. The director left, like they spent maybe a week. The
Mm-hmm.
David Hyde Pierce, Mark, and Joanna Lumley and Wemette, and then the director left, and then we all came, and we were playing the acting troupe, and so we played improv games for a week that were centered around that we were this 17th century improv, like acting troupe. and uh, and it culminated in like David Hyde Pierce was playing Elamir, which
Yeah.
is a play on the name Moliere,
Yeah.
and so he was the head of the acting troupe, and so David wrote a little play in rhyming couplets that we performed, or Joanna Lumley as the queen. And I mean, it was like we rehearsed the play. We rehearsed
Mhm.
this play that David Hyde Pierce wrote. It was
Mhm.
like 10 minutes, like a kind of Moliere sketch.
Mhm.
Really good. I have it somewhere. He, as an opening night gift, like had it published, like wrote, with pictures and stuff. Um, so we rehearsed this play, like improvising
Mhm.
as our characters, the rehearsal of a play in like the 17th century. And then we did all these other improvs with Mark. And so, and, and like, there were so many, like, I think people have this idea of like English theater tradition that's very serious and very,
Mhm.
but man, they like work for 45 minutes and then they take tea break and work a little bit more and then play like foursquare and volleyball. At least that was the experience. So we played a lot of volleyball. And it's this particular version of volleyball where you have to
Yeah.
hit it over the net with your head. And before you can hit it over, before you hit it over, you have to pass
My
it to someone
God.
else on your team. Like
Mhm.
everyone on the team has to touch it
Yeah.
or someone hits it over with their head. I mean, it's just
It's
crazy.
goofy. Yeah.
We played that every day. And then when we actually did the show, like part of his deal, Mark arranges that you're playing it every day before the show, like an hour before the show for a half hour. There's a net set up in the house, like in the midst of the seats. And you're like in a lane and we played volleyball for a half hour and it was incredible and it was like athletic and by the end of the run like people were doing this crazy like you know Ronaldo kind of headers over and I mean like and Joanna Lumley is like slapping it down and everybody has nicknames and I mean and it was competitive but it I mean he's brilliant because he needs it because his whole thing is he's playing.
Mhm.
He's playing. And so that gives him the energy, like, right? The game to get everybody playing.
Yeah.
And and because it's a game, everybody's equal. I'm trying to kick his ass, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to beat him, right?
Mhm.
And so we're all level in that game. And so kind of instead of him being the star and do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I also imagine too that there had to be something about that where you're consistently starting the show out of your head, which is probably a good place to be because you're doing something so physical. You're not in your head about things. Like you're just your blood is pumping, and so then you can just go on stage and just do the thing.
Yeah. So there was that, and then also he had a ritual that he did that he invited us to participate, where he creates this thing called a bundle, and it's like shamanistic kind of thing where
Hmm.
we all got together and filled up this big like burlap sack with stuff like offerings to the spirits, um, and did a whole ritual, and the thing hangs backstage and we're like
Yeah.
summoning positive thoughts to
Hmm.
send and all the best, the best things in our hearts. We wrote on little piece of paper and put it in that thing along with offerings of like chocolate and tobacco and alcohol. And this stuff is in this big sack. And and um he every before every performance is like with that sack hanging backstage,
Oh
like
my God.
getting the energy from it.
Hmm.
And the idea of it is that it's a decoy. It's like it holds all this beautiful, positive energy. So if there's any negative energy out in the world that is trying to attack the play, the heart of the play, it's absorbed by that thing.
Hmm.
I think the negative energy or something thinks that that's the heart of the play and goes and is absorbed there. I mean, it's so interesting, but he's there like, and it involves like summoning up your own ancestors, like your ancestors, familial, but also like spiritual,
Hmm.
artistic, those who have gone before, and really dedicating yourself to your sort of, you know, intention,
Yeah.
But in Jerusalem, he would just be back there like talking to it, as a rooster. It's like talking to it. Yeah, it was. So I did take that for my show. I created my own ritual for Mercy Killers. And then I would create a mandala of
Hmm.
kind of sacred objects
Hmm.
that I would set up backstage wherever I was playing. And each of the objects kind of represented a different, different thing that
Hmm.
resonated with the play. And
Hmm.
and eventually each of those objects would kind of became endowed with um, the whole imagined all this stuff, all the
Yeah.
the imagined circumstances, all that stuff. Um, but you can put all that in an object. Like for example, one of the things was my dad's merit badge or my dad's Eagle Scout badge.
Okay.
Um, my dad was an Eagle Scout. I was a Boy Scout
Hmm.
for a while, and I quit. I told my dad I was quit. I didn't want to be around those guys. The morning of the night when he was invited to come and speak to our troop.
Yeah.
And so he was just so, and in retrospect, like what a dick I was, like, right?
Yeah.
And so it has, but the character Joe has a very, the father is a very important relationship. And so that Eagle Scout badge became just held all of that imaginative work such that I wouldn't have to, it's just, you could just pick it up and hold it and it would come quicker
Yeah. Yeah.
than I
If you
can.
endow meaning onto a thing, like
Yeah.
it can be anything that you need it to be. I feel like that was really one of my important lessons when I was training a lot and doing Spolin work. It's like you can endow meaning on anything. It's just a matter of making sure. I think for me that I believe it. And so it's
Yeah.
like I saw that I saw that come up in different places where I would do like an exercise in like mask class, where it was like see a star, pick a star, look at a star. Something as simple as that, where it's just like no, I believe that there's a star in my gaze. And
Mm.
there was something transformative about saying it could actually be that easy about just endowing that you see it. That's it.
Mm.
If you see it, then you have to react. Then
Mm.
you're gonna have feelings about it,
Mm.
and that
Yeah,
fills you up.
that's good.
Yeah. So it's really interesting hearing that kind of stuff where it's just like he's to endow meaning on a different things because it really does put you in that space of imagination. So then that way you're coming in a place where sometimes you do feel full and you feel ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I think that is really what uh, I wanted to take and run with my solo show. And
Okay.
so I then sort of stumbled on just some exercises that I created for myself, also as a part because I was teaching at Stella Adler, so I was kind of exploring it, and it's really, and it also came from August Osage County
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of the third act,
Mm-hmm.
little Charles is center stage for like a half hour, just looking out at the audience
Mm.
where an imaginary TV is.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there, not doing anything, just watching TV. And the play is happening, in the other rooms. And so that was like, that was a specific acting challenge,
Yeah.
right? Um, that I experimented with to solve because like you can see the audience,
Yeah.
right? And so, and as soon as Ivy comes in, like it's got to be, it's like a real scene. It's a beautiful, poignant scene, and so you got to somehow. So so there were different experiments. One of which was trying to like doing multiplication problems in my head.
Oh God.
Ultimately, that wasn't the technique that I stayed with, but there was a period of time where I was just like, I cannot, I gotta do something other than just look at these people out here,
I
right?
mean, it's so hard to just do that, especially if you were doing that for a year. I mean, like I imagine you probably had nights where you probably spaced out, like, like
I
there could have been a potential for that.
I did actually get better at multiplying like double numbers, like 25 plus 37 or 25 times 37. Like during that period of time, I was like, I started to be able to do it.
Oh
But
my God.
but what I figured out instead was I just started to, instead of sitting there on the Broadway stage, I was sitting at my grandpa's house.
Hmm. Yeah.
And like I'm there right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And like that's enough to kind of be like, I know the smell of that rug. Like, mhm.
That's it. The smell and just the like I'm here, but I'm also in this space that you can't see, but yeah. And that's like very relaxing.
Yeah.
So so the that kind of started this idea of this exercise. I just want to share it. Is is I go back to my house
Hmm.
that I grew up in. This is like a kind of long, kind of slow, you know, relaxation, meditation kind of thing. But I go back and I start outside and I just kind of walk into the house and go room by room through my house and see what's there.
Hmm.
Like go through the drawers,
Yeah.
right? Go through and and then just allow stuff to come up. Like, you know, um, people come in and out
Mm.
or specific memory comes back. But it really starts with just this exploration of like going through the house. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, and then adding layers like Christmas,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
In each of those rooms, or Halloween, or birthday party, or mom,
Hmm.
dad. And I mean, it's just like it just unlocked for me like, oh my God, there's this whole infinite encyclopedia that we all have, that we're completely unaware of
Mm.
mostly in our daily lives. Like it's all there. All those
Yeah.
memories are there. And I started to imagine we had this my mom we had this closet in that house that was very deep. And I always, as a kid, would go back there and like dig through the coats with the hope that I would be able to go to Narnia, right? And I would sit there in the
Yeah.
back and like imagine like, oh man. But this exercise for me is kind of like that wardrobe because I I feel like this sort of memory exploration is deeply connected to imagination.
Yeah.
It's like a very similar muscle. So so I would like, okay, vividly remember my house, my bedroom, um, and yeah, all five senses, all, stuff. And then, okay, but let's add a filter. what if I'm the prince in this space,
Mm-hmm.
very real space,
Yeah.
and my dad has died, and my uncle is in the bedroom with my mom. Do you know what I mean? Like
The Hamlet movie. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hamlet, you're in Hamlet, but it's in this, it's like adding an element of imagination to memory and then just letting, eventually just going into imagination. But something about exercising the memory like that, I think strengthens the ability to summon stuff up from the imagination.
Yeah. Well, and I think what it's also doing is just kind of like given circumstance then becomes in your body. And then so then that way it's kind of like especially if you're kind of like, oh, if two people are interacting with one another and then they're interacting with two different people, it's kind of like your relationship to their relationship, whatever it is just like everything imbues new feeling, new senses. And so you're not having to work for the thing anymore.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
in
And
there.
I think also like this kind of exercise to me, it's more like an ongoing thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an ongoing exercise. Like my doing Tai Chi in the morning is
Mm-hmm.
work on my instrument, like this kind of memory thing. It's not to me so much about like, and I think this is personally a little bit of a mistake about like people argue about Lee Strasberg and emotional memory and or sense memory, all this stuff. Um, I don't think in the moment that you're like practicing, okay, at this moment, I'm going to remember my dead dog. I'm going
Yeah.
to think about it right
Mm-hmm.
here so that I can create this emotion here. I think
Yeah.
it's more like preparatory work because you're opening your imagination, your memory, and it's really just like inviting your subconscious
Yeah. Yeah.
up.
It's work to make the channel open. But I think the struggle with that, like I don't know if you had a chance to read the method, but it's a very good book.
Which is
It's
that Lee
called
Strasberg book?
it's not Lee
Or
Strasberg's book.
oh,
It's a
it's this
book,
new book.
the
Oh
new
yeah,
book.
right, right.
It's it's phenomenal. It's
Yeah,
phenomenal because it's just an amazing chronicling of like literally from Stanislavski to like kind of where we got to of like how we interpret what method acting is
right, right.
and the philosophy behind it. And you know, a lot of stuff with Strasberg does work. I mean, there's a reason why that basically almost all American school of thought, it still kind of comes from him.
Mm.
But he's such an asshole. He's such an asshole. Like he really was. He was a nasty person. And like I think that there was something about the fact that his form of abusing people plus the method in which he teaches is a way of facilitating abuse. The same thing comes from Meisner, I believe, which is why a lot of people hate Meisner because I think a lot of what happens in Meisner is there's a lot of beautiful lessons that can come from Meisner, but what happens? A lot of people become abusive actors through Meisner because of the way that it was taught to them. As opposed to it being a listening exercise, they're teaching it of like Meisner's it's where we go to be in the dangerous place, the dangerous
Oh,
place.
I see.
You know what I mean?
I don't
So
have I didn't have much personal experience with it, so but I'm curious about
it's
it.
Meisner's strange because it's one of the few methods where like because no one ever says I'm a Strasberg actor, I'm a Stella actor, but people go I'm a Meisner actor.
Hmm.
And that's their way of saying I do heavy listening, I'm on first impulse, but usually what that means is like that actor's probably abusive. Because he learned all the wrong lessons. He interpreted all the wrong lessons from it.
Uh,
Like it's the
can
whole
I?
thing. It's the whole thing of like I'm so in the moment that I can't do anything rehearsed kind of bullshit. But
Hmm.
like, but there is a lot of valid teaching to what Meisner has to say and what it has to do. But what certain pedagogies do is that like if it's interpreted through the wrong facilitator, I think
Hmm.
is what leads to I think a lot of emotional abuse in theater. And I think that the problem is like, you know, you kind of learn through this book, through a lot of it, is like why is there a lot of abuse in American theater? And I think a lot of it has to do with like Lee Strasberg really set the tone for a lot of it, especially when you read who Lee Strasberg taught. He taught almost all the pioneers, almost
Yeah.
all of them. So
Well,
the
I mean, he and Stella
yeah,
Adler also.
yeah, and like, and if you think about
Right.
it too, it's like we're still only really 1 degree separated from both of them. So
Well,
when we think about pedagogy in terms of acting from that point of view in American pedagogy, anyway,
mhm.
like I think we have to deal with the duality of like there's important teachings in there that's also been superseded by a culture that led to things getting abused, like getting being it allowed to facilitate abuse because of how certain people taught it from other places,
Right.
you know.
You know, I kind of I feel like I have a kind of unique perspective on this stuff that actually goes back to August Osage County. This is sort of a really it was a really fortuitous coming together of a lot of things for me.
Yeah,
I want to preface it by saying again, like my mentor was a Russian guy
yeah.
from Moscow Art Theater, and before that, the Bakhtongov School. Bakhtongov was one of Stanislavski's proteges, along with Michael Chekhov,
Mm-hmm.
but like out on his own, experimenting in his own way, you know. Um, so during August Osage County, I was asked to do a workshop
Mm-hmm.
of a play about the group theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the main characters were Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler. I was playing Harold Clurman. Um,
Oh, Clermont, he's interesting.
and
Interesting character. Mm-hmm.
and and Stanislavski. And oh, so the play was about Stella Adler going to Paris. Do you know this?
That's a good. It's in the book. It's in that
Oh,
book.
okay.
Like
So,
that basically Stanislavski was completely misinterpreted.
right. Well, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what she said. So the play was her going to Paris and learning under Stanislavski, who was played by Paul Sorvino.
Interesting. Paul
Uh,
Sorvino. Fascinating.
and Stella Adler was played by Mira Sorvino. So I got to be married to Mira Sorvino for a few days, which was nice. Uh, and then, but what was incredible was there was um, the role of Stanislavski's doctor was played by this theater professor, teacher, who was also an actor from, I believe he taught at the Oslo School,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a Russian who was from the Bakhtongov School.
Okay.
And then also there was this woman who played Stanislavski's wife,
Mm-hmm.
who was a Russian actress who at Juilliard, we watched this film called Unfinished Work for a Player Piano,
Mm-hmm.
which is a kind of classic 70s Russian film that was presented to us as it's a Chekhov short story. It was presented to us as this is how you can perform Chekhov. Like, and it's beautiful. I recommend it to anyone. It's just so full of like the humanity, the humor, the tragedy, the absurdity, everything. And it's like, it's a great film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this woman who was playing Stanislavski's wife was one of the stars of that film.
Mm-hmm.
And she had defected from the Soviet Union and was just living in Brighton Beach in total obscurity. Nobody knew
Hmm.
who she was.
Interesting.
She couldn't speak English very much either. And she just had like a couple of lines. But when we actually did the thing, her bio was there and I saw unfinished and I was like, "Oh my God, it's you." And I said to, I told her about that like um we all watched this at Juilliard and it's so incredible, so great. And she was so grateful, you know what I mean? That
Mm-hmm.
somebody to be remembered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because she was just alienated from her entire career, right?
Yeah.
Living whatever. Anyway, so while I was working on this, I interviewed my cast members in August Osage County because like
Mm-hmm.
Estelle Parsons was the head of the Actors Studio. She was one of Lee
Oh, I didn't know that.
Strasberg's proteges.
Yeah.
So I like asked her about it. What is it about? Who was he? And then I watched her perform at night. And I was like, okay, that's her. She's like, yeah, she's like, it's real or don't fucking do it. And she's like, you know, in the scene, like at the dinner scene, she's like saying nasty stuff under her breath to get a rise out of, this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if and it's like it can vary night to night, but she's like committed to what's real in the moment, right? In a way that sometimes maybe, I don't know, depending on your taste, you're like, no, you should just like phone that moment in to keep do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like this demands of this moment is something else. I don't know. She's gonna kill me. No, she was awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, but I then also like Elizabeth Ashley was a early student of Sanford Meisner,
Mm-hmm.
and Guy Boyd, who played my father.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the and so and then Paul Sorvino also was
Yeah.
and he was like
Yeah.
preaching while we're working on this play. He's like, well, Sanford Meisner said this and he knew this and that. And then we do the reading, and at the reading is Ellen Adler, Stella Adler's daughter,
Oh my fucking god.
and John Strasberg. John Strasberg. And there's a talk back afterwards. And then this interesting, eccentric guy who had this newspaper called The Voice of the American Theater, who's like dresses like Harold Clurman and like does a Harold Clurman one-man show. And then Paul Sorvino, who is like a a Meisner zealot. And there's like this argument going on about what the real thing was and who's doing it and da da da.
Mm-hmm.
And in this workshop, the guy, like the greatest performance was this Russian actor who played the doctor. It was a small part,
Mm-hmm.
and he was perfect. And he was exhibiting, manifesting the actual thing. Like he
Mm-hmm.
was totally transformed into a different character, and
Mm-hmm.
at the same time totally truthful and real
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
spontaneously specific. And all these people are like bloviating about all this stuff, like what did they really mean? And it was so, like, in retrospect, like so uh arrogant and like sort of like uh kind of cultural deafness, right? Like we're sitting in this room having an argument about what Stanislavski actually meant when there's people who are there from Stanislavski's direct lineage, and no one is interested at all in anything they have to say. Do you know what I mean?
Because they're interested in their own point and not interested in what's in front of them. Yeah. No,
Well, no, I
it's
mean
yeah.
like the Stanislavski whatever didn't like stop. It didn't come to America, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it didn't even come to America, really.
Yeah.
I mean, of course it did, but like Strasberg really created his own thing.
Yeah.
Um, but if we want to know what the Stanislavski tradition is, like it didn't stop. It's like,
It was
it,
happening right in front of you, and it's like literally right
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's no, that shit is, oh god, that shit is so fascinating to me. I think that's why too. Like, I mean, we're coming up on the 2 hour mark, so I'm gonna wrap it up in a sec because I did want to have a bigger conversation about pedagogy in general. But yeah, no, but stuff like that I find really interesting of just being like, what the fuck does it matter as long as something gets you to where it needs to get you?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And so that's like yeah, Strasberg great, Meisner great, Adler great, Milligan great.
Hmm. Yeah,
You're
yeah.
great.
Thank you.
I, I mean, no, you know what I mean. Like, actually, you have to just, yeah, you have to reinvent it. It has to be reinvented for ourselves. We can look at these traditions and just take inspiration, but
Mm,
it's it's like it's like a spiritual path or something. Like the Buddha cannot become enlightened for you, and we
mm.
don't even know what it means. So
Yeah. No,
just have
I
to
got,
live it.
yeah, I got to say, like, as transformative as grad school was, some of the biggest learning has definitely come afterwards. Because the what now of the afterwards is like, I really think where you really start to find out who you are.
Yeah, I mean, and also, of course, like the real elephant in the room is the business. Like we got to do all this stuff in the worst possible, under the worst possible conditions.
Yeah. Yeah. As dictated by hypercapitalism. Fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but man, thank you though for doing this. Like
Thank you.
this was a lot of fun,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, no, it's just it was kind of crazy how the time flew. Like I really thought I was gonna be like, well, I bet we can make this hour and a half, and it just went right to two. So like, it was
Good.
kind of wild. Like, no, like in a good, in such a good way. But yeah, no, because I haven't also talked to you in a while, and I think there's a lot of your perspective that like I was kind of interested in kind of um getting, because I think like you come from
Well,
like
I
a,
forced you because you needed a ride
yeah.
and you had no choice but to.
Yeah, I mean, but it was fun to discuss. But it's also like not only it's just like age wise we come from a different place, but it's also like region wise we come from different schools of pedagogy. We come from different regions. So I was just very curious about like what that means to kind of like come from different paths and to kind of like you know
Yeah.
it, because like I'm just curious about those like different schools of thought when it comes to like pedagogy, acting, and like and also perspective on where we come into something.
Mm. Say more about that, where we come into something.
Well, like process,
Mm.
process in general. You know, granted, everyone has to find their own way into their own process, but I think for me, kind of like I think everything was kind of summed up in that reading that you had, where it's just like everyone has this idea of the thing that it should be,
Mm. Hmm.
and then, but when do you reach into what toolbox? When do
Yeah.
you pull when do you pull from what?
Yeah.
Because I notice that it's just like for me, it changes with every piece of text that I touch. It
Yeah.
changes, and it also changes based on what how my life affects me.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden, it's just like the eyes that I see something in, I wouldn't have seen it that way even 2 weeks ago. So I think for me, it's like I'm kind of interested in just kind of like where people come from, not only in terms of the training that they have, but the life that they've had.
Mm.
Because I do think that you could learn a lot through those things and how they come together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think also, I mean, something that I think maybe I will always regret is um, like what we're talking about, these different approaches and all that kind of stuff. Like for example, like Steppenwolf,
Hmm.
at least in I don't know because I only worked on that show. I haven't worked there. I don't really know what exists there now.
Hmm.
But in that show, like they have a shared aesthetic. They have do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It felt like I got to partake in it a little.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that that's like a truth, like Stanislavski technique. Um,
Yeah.
if you're really going to like these things don't, I mean, I think we often think of them as like individual techniques or something, but there is, I think, to a larger extent than we think, that these techniques are actually for an ensemble.
Yes. Yes.
So, so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I was able to have a deeper experience alone because
Yeah.
when mostly I've worked in regional theater, and that's always like, your element of kind of Ronin, you're like
Mm-hmm.
mercenary samurai, and you come in, and who knows what the style and the, and your there isn't a shared aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I kind of, if I could go back and do it all over again, um, always wanted when I was a young actor to be in a group,
Yes.
and create a shared vision and a shared way of working, and like that's always the most powerful theater that I see. Like Teatro Visto, I'm they have, I'm sure their way of like, they're in a conversation together,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah,
like
yeah. Well, and that
conversation.
I think, to be honest, I mean, yeah. Back to that original point, I think that the reason why Teatro Vista is working so well right now is because Wendy is so community oriented. She's
Mm,
so community oriented. That's why the work is good, because the communal spirit, I think, of that space is
mm,
lifted just by the
yeah.
fact that they're all doing it together. No, I believe that. Like, I think it's the one thing that got me excited about Chicago theater to begin with was literally you had companies that had a specific process that they created for each other, and just magic would just come out of that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I
and you
remember
know,
like when I moved here, I was on Balmoral,
yeah,
and I just like wandered over to Steep Theater.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, wow, man,
yeah,
it's like 2 blocks from my house. And I'm
yeah,
like, wow, is it like this every 2 blocks? There's this,
yeah.
but they clearly like, you know, I, my understanding is they sort of come out of Northwestern. Is that right?
I
Like
think
some
so. I think so. Yeah, but like,
group of people, but it's like a group of friends, and they have created a vision and a conversation, and yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, no, but like, but no, no, but like, honestly, like, shared vision, I think, is so important. I mean, like, it's just so
Yeah.
many Chicago theater companies. That's why they do great work, and I think that's where great theater comes from. Is just like when you have 10 to 12, 14, 16 really smart people melding. And I think that's the magic of the space. And I think I think we need to continue to lean on that, especially in a world, in the social media world, where everything does become hyper individualized.
Mm.
That, the more I think about this kind of stuff, where I'm just like, we need to realize that we need to get back to community.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's so true, and I think it's also just so important, just as a conversation about American theater in general. Like, um, you know, is it possible that we can get back to uh, like a real sense of, like the regional theater movement really started, it was going to be ensembles, and it was
Yeah,
going to rep, and like it was going to be um, groups of artists working together, um, and now it just
it's
it's just so
commercial
ob-
vehicles. It's commercial
it's
vehicles.
it's just so obvious though too, like regional theaters, like, well, if it's really really awesome work, right?
Yeah.
Like, and also, like, what is the missing ingredient? Love.
No, but
Like,
that's true though. It's true though. It's
like,
because there's so much love in it that somehow something like just sprouts from it.
yeah, but I mean, like, having a model where you're just like bringing in, we're like, really mercenary migrant workers in the arts and have no home, and you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it's brutal,
Mhm.
and and that we expect that you're going to get a bunch of people together, and they're somehow going to make great art together. Like it's a pretty it's not super great conditions.
No, no, it's not, and I'm glad that we're having further conversations about burnout in this space because we do need to discuss it. We do need to discuss it. We do need to find ways to really devise more processes that are going to help us take care of each other. Because
Yeah.
that's the way I think that's the way that we're going to save this space is by instead of thinking about saving the institution, no, save each other.
Mm.
Save each other. Then we save this.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think on that note, I think it's a good place to call it. Mike, thank you. This was a
Yeah,
blast.
thanks.
This was a blast.
Well, man, I've done a couple one-man shows, so given the chance, I can talk forever,
Oh
and
yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And we'll definitely need to catch up sometime again to have the more boring conversations that won't go to the public.
Yes, that sounds good.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you,
Good
Mike.
to see
Take
you,
care.
man. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.